Moms, do you want to prevent your children from renouncing their faith and becoming an atheist? My guest today, Doug L., will equip you with all you need to know to repel an attack on their faith. Stay tuned. Hello, moms. Welcome to the Front Parking Spot podcast. I am so glad you're here. I'm Jennifer Bosma, wife, mom, grandma, former teacher for 23 years, and now a Christian children's book author and your podcast host. Are you a faith-based mom trying to live out a Christian life for your family? Do you want to learn more ways that you can have power over your child's spiritual growth? Inside this podcast, you will find tried and true ideas to grow in your faith and be the best wife and mom you can be. So listen in as you're cleaning up, doing the drive, or matching that sock, and be encouraged to know that God has his front parking spot set aside for you. Hello, moms, and thank you for joining me on the Front Parking Spot podcast today. I am so excited because today's author, Doug L., he is a former atheist and he needed scientific evidence to believe in God. He was raised in Connecticut and he went to MIT where he graduated early and he double majored in math and physics. He then obtained a master's in theoretical mathematics from the University of Maryland. Not to stop that soon after he went to law school and he became a prominent attorney with so many accolades. His legal training and work, combined with his academic science background and a lifetime of independent study, has given him a uniquely grounded approach to science, religion, and philosophy. Oh my goodness, we have so much to unpack today, Doug. Welcome to the Front Parking Spot podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here, Jennifer. Really appreciate the invitation.
I am just amazed. Your resume is crazy. Like, you've done so many things. And I mean, we just kind of touched on a few things. Did I miss anything that you want to add into this?
No, I don't like talking about myself, actually. I
Aw.
want to talk about, why God is real.
Oh,
That's my message. That's what I'm doing in my old age.
I
So,
love it. And when I was reading your bio to have you on the show when we were connecting, what I love about this is, your story makes me so think of The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. You were very similar. You were very parallel in your thinking, like Lee Strobel. Tell me more about that.
yeah, I consider myself an atheist, Jennifer. I was raised in a Christian household, although it was pretty clear my father didn't really believe. So it was kind of lukewarm Christianity, maybe. But when I got to high school, there was a science book that suggested that life started in a dirty pond. Okay, just accidental. And that nonsense is still in some high school science books. And both of the people involved in that experiment have since said it doesn't, and so on, and it's been disproved. But I became what I think I would call intellectually bullied. I was bullied into thinking that the smart money was on atheism
Mm.
and that you could explain things without God. So I became an atheist, and kind of like Lee Strobel, because I became a fairly nasty atheist. A lot of atheists, are a little cranky, and I thought this God stuff was nonsense. Excuse me.
You're
So the speeding up the story a little bit, and now I'm married and I'm in my early 30s, and my wife says we got to get our son baptized. So I thought about that ridiculous question, Jennifer, and I said, yes, dear. Okay. I mean, I'm not dumb enough to pick a fight over that. You want to sprinkle some holy water on the kid? Go ahead. So we went to church and I felt something.
Mm.
Yeah. Call it what you want. There was a peace there, a sense of connection. And I was doing very good in the secular world at that time, my legal career and financially and all that stuff. But I wanted now to believe. But I told myself, well, Doug, you're an MIT guy. You can't believe unless there's scientific evidence. So I went looking. I read a lot of books, and I've been doing that for 40 years.
Mm.
And the amazing thing is that the science keeps getting more and more overwhelming every year, that our universe was created, that our universe is designed, that life was created, and that life was designed. And so on and so on. So it's it's just so wonderful. And it's just in the last few decades that the science has developed to this point where we can come to those four conclusions.
Mm.
And it's super exciting, I think. And what I find is a lot of people don't really know the true science because you don't find it in the regular newspapers or, all these things, they're sort of buried. And what they do is there's always some atheist explanation that makes no sense, but people don't challenge it because they get somebody up there, a professor or whatever. So
And we were
that's a
talking,
little bit of, that's my story. I feel I was intellectually bullied.
right. I was
I
going to
was
say
an
the bullying
atheist.
thing.
I was an atheist for 15 years. The joy went out of my life,
Mm.
and I don't like bullies. So, so let's talk about the truth.
Absolutely, and I love this because you spent decades in reading your bio, decades studying the evidence for faith, and so many people just grasp onto this atheism. They don't even want to explore. They just think,
Right.
"This is the way I am," and I like what you said too. Sometimes you can't really convince somebody to change. You can plant faith, you can plant seeds, and then you have to pray that they kinda come around and to that, you know?
Exactly. I don't think you can argue anybody into faith, but you can say, where do you think the universe came from?
Mhm.
Where do you think life came from? Why is the human brain technologically the most advanced thing in the entire universe that we know of? And the one I like when I'm talking to people, sometimes I'll start off with Jennifer is why is all life built from digital code? Okay. DNA,
Mhm.
which to quote Bill Gates, who I think knows a little bit about coding, is far, far more complex than any code human beings have ever done.
Mm.
So I mean, when I wrote my first book, came out in 2014 called Counting to God. Just before that, 3 years earlier, 400 world top scientists worldwide did this human genome project called ENCODE. Anyhow, 400 plus top scientists all around the world. And they released 30 major papers and made the front page of the New York Times. They found out that just about all of our 3.2 billion letters of code, well, the majority of it is fully functional. In other words, it's not junk, like
Mhm.
Darwinists will tell you. It's all working code. They came out and they said there's at least two layers of information in there. To me, that reminds me of a Bach fugue, because I love classical music. I mean, there's layers within layers of information. Well, I mean, how can that code not be designed? They
Mhm.
found out, for example, we have 4 million switches in us to turn systems on and off. That number was on the front page of the New York Times. 4
In
million
in a
switches.
human body?
Yeah, there
Wow.
are 4 million coded switches to turn things on and off. And I mean, this is 400 scientists worldwide. How do you get a digital code? We could talk about that more. I mean,
Right?
there's more evidence every year.
Now, is that what you one of your questions, that I had, what scientific single scientific faith destroy atheism? Is that would you lean into
Yeah,
that?
that's what I start off with is
Right.
digital code
Mm.
because,
Wow.
I mean, how does the digital code get in the right order?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if you think about a deck of cards, there's only 52 cards. Suppose you wrote down a random order, shuffled cards, and dealt them out till you got them all in that right order. Well, you'd never do it, even if you lived a billion years. Okay,
Right.
there's too many chances. So the odds of getting this digital code right by chance are just
Mm.
ridiculous. Life had to start off with the digital code. It had to start off with machines to read the code. We have in our body trillions of 3D printers. So are you familiar with those? A
Yes.
little bit how they work.
Right.
So
Yep.
they take code and they print out parts.
Mm.
We have trillions of 3D printers in us that print out parts from the code. The parts are called proteins,
Mhm.
a word everybody knows. The
Yeah.
sections of the code that are used to print out parts are called genes.
Mm.
People hear these words and they don't appreciate, the miracle of life, what's really going
Yeah.
on. So
And we
to
are
give
made
life,
Yeah, we're made
yeah,
in God's image, and then people just casually just throw it away, and it's just
yeah,
and I think when, I have my daughters are pregnant, and I look at what is happening and this baby growing, and it's a miracle that we see every day, and so many of us take it for granted that
yeah,
this child is created with the DNA that they when a person's pregnant, the DNA is there, and that same
yeah.
DNA is at when they die at 95. Nothing changes, and it's just I think so many people just take these for granted. And in the Bible, I mean, Jesus was raising Lazarus. He was raising all the people that he raised from the dead. And then some people, they would see it and then they'd start to doubt again, and I
Yeah.
think that's just the way our world is. And yeah, but I mean, and why what was it that I'm kind of leading to the point of like when moms have someone in their family that is an atheist, but what was it for you, Doug, that you rejected atheism for faith? What was it?
Well, I was teaching myself molecular biology, which is all this stuff about how life works and DNA. And so it's a really big, thick, one of
Yeah.
the nerdiest, heaviest books you could ever find. Graduate
Not
courses.
nighttime reading, I say, right?
Now, and I'm lugging it on these planes
Mhm.
because at the time, I was on like 6 or 8 flights a week for legal reasons. And because I commuted long distance. Anyhow, I'm reading this book and learning how the 3D printers snap together parts called amino acids. It's like children's connecting blocks, okay? And they
Right.
electronically, the machines in our body, the 3D printers, they have a whole selection of 20 of these. They snap ones on top of each other, kind of like different colored children's blocks. And and then gets folded. We still don't understand exactly that, and it produces a part.
Mhm.
And I started calculating the odds that if you had 20 choices at each spot, what are the odds that, when you do 150 of these or something, what are the odds you're going to get it right? And being a real nerdy mathematician, it just blew me away. I mean, you could never get it by chance. And there's so much of this everywhere. And that's when I knew God was real. And that's a weird story. I guess a lot of people aren't going to relate to it, but you asked me when I knew.
Well, I mean, because it's just I mean, here you are, you're not believing in God, but you're sitting on those planes thinking, "There is no way this can't be from
Yeah.
God our Father who created it all." I mean, it's amazing. Okay, so we're not without going to the molecular level, what do you do for that mom who's listening to this right now and her son or daughter is starting to question the faith? They have been raised in a family of, Christians. They've gone to VBS. They've
Yeah.
done all the things. What do you do? And we can talk about your books because you've written some great kids' books too. But what do you do? Where does that mom start?
There's a lot of resources, Jennifer. So
Mhm.
I'm going to jump right to my book.
Please
Is
do.
that okay? Okay.
Yes,
So my
please
my
do.
newest book, as I was just telling you before we started recording, is a graphic novel. So it's a cartoon book. It's
Mhm.
aimed at kids. I thought it was going to be for like high school and college kids. So yesterday at my church, this woman stops me, introduces herself, says she gave that book to her 10-year-old grandson a year ago. The other day, her grandson, she invited her, kids and grandkids over, and the grandson walks in carrying the book. He said he'd read it 10 times.
Aw.
Another, and there's stories on this. I mean, you got to break it down for kids. But here's the truth. And by the way, I don't make any money off the sale of the book. I'm not here to make money. The
We're
Lord's been
sharing the message. The
very
message,
generous
right.
to me. It's published by an institution called the Discovery Institute,
Mhm.
which has a website you could find, but a lot of top scientists. Okay. But the, you know, the book talks about the complexity of life and it kind of explains it. And And I've heard other stories of 10 and 11-year-old kids just loving it and realizing God is real. So that's a good resource. It's called the God Proofs. And I've got a website, thegodproofs.com,
Mm.
which has 5 animated videos. Each is like a minute and a half, 2, 3 minutes. And by the company that did the artwork on the graphic novel. They are fantastic.
Mm.
You can show these to your kids. I think they'll really love them. I've got some spectacular reviews on these 5 animations. So, sit down and watch them with your kids is my
Right.
advice. That's
Right.
that's only a few minutes. Watch one a day or whatever your schedule permits and then talk about it. How did we get digital code in us with machines to read it and use it and all that stuff? And learn about some of the fantastic technology of life. I mean, God's technology is far, far more advanced than anything human beings have done. We live in this technology and it's in our bodies and we have code in our bodies and we don't appreciate it, that it came from a mind. Have you ever heard of something called SETI, SETI? Search
No,
for extraterrestrial intelligence.
okay. I haven't heard.
Well, there's a old movie which a guy like me would know called Contact with Jodie Foster, where they're using these radio telescopes and they discover coded signals. And they realize it's code because it means something, it repeats. And then they conclude they're dealing with a mind.
Hmm.
But we have the most complex. That's how people are looking for extraterrestrial intelligence with these radio telescopes trying to find coded signals.
Mm.
50 years they've been looking, they haven't found anything out there.
Right.
But what scientists have found code that human beings didn't build is inside us, and it's more complicated than anything humans have built. So, ask your kids to think about how that happened. Ask, just start, and it's great stuff because it teaches them about biology, a little bit of chemistry. It's not that hard, actually.
Well, when you mentioned it's a graphic novel, I remember when I was teaching school, I taught fourth graders. So they're about 9 and 10. We were talking like the boy that was a 10-year-old that was very interested in the books too. But kids love the graphic novels. It's like for
Yeah.
moms, if you're listening, it's like a comic book. So they really love that. It keeps their attention. So I love that you use the graphic novel as your resource, your platform to share that with kids. And the other thing while you were talking, Doug, when I asked the question, like, what do you do as a mom who is, having a child that's questioning the faith or asking these big questions? I love it that you mentioned too, we have to ask questions back. We just can't become reactive. Like, what do you mean? You've been a Christian all your life, Jojo,
Yeah, that
Susie or
doesn't work.
whatever. Yeah.
You've got to counter the doubts with real science.
Hmm.
That's what the kids want to hear, and that will change their lives.
Yes.
And I totally get that there's a lot of you know people who do other things with their lives besides study biology and stuff, and that's all wonderful. But I'm telling you, this stuff is the basics of why God is real. Is
Hmm.
not hard science to understand.
Right.
Anybody can do it. Any one of your mothers and your moms, and you look into it yourself. Just ask your kid, well, how do you think life got started? Who do you think put the code in human beings? If you want to, why is the human brain more advanced than anything else in the universe? Why is it 1,000 times more energy efficient than any computer why do we have as many connections in our brain as stars in 1,000 galaxies? And there's you ask these questions. I think that's the better. You're absolutely right. You can't say, well, God is real because I say so. That never
Right.
works.
And you've learned this and you've been in VBS and blah, 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 blah. You have to,
Yeah.
I like, and I like that you're making it simple, starting with our bodies, starting with like, how are we wired? Like start with something they know, which is themselves. Like, so tell me, how did life start then? Obviously, where's our genetic coding? And so I think, but for a mom to really, you were talking about resources for a parent other than, your book, and your book will go in there.
Yeah.
Is there anything you talked about the discovery thing that parents can kinda get to give them an overall knowledge before if they're feeling that they're getting into these waters?
There's a lot of books out there. I'm not really sure where to start. The
Okay.
Discovery Institute has some, the Institute for Creation Research.
Or go
Uh,
to your website, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot,
Yeah,
and just dig into it, and
right.
you'll find resources. I'm not sure what to recommend, depending on what level of technology or sophistication you're looking for.
Well, you know what? What you said was great. I think going to your website, and what's your website? Just we'll have it in the show notes, but just mention it real quick.
Yeah, well, the one my first book was Counting to God.
Mhm.
So I have a website, countingtogod.com, which has my bio on it, my
Okay.
books. I do a blog weekly, and you can sign up for my blog there. It's free, no ads, not trying to sell anything, okay?
Right.
And I've also I've also have this video, the godproofs.com, this website, the godproofs.com, with videos from the book. So
Love it. I
yeah,
don't have
get out
that.
there and look. It's there,
Mm.
but you don't read about it on the front page of the major newspapers in this country, that's for sure. But it's there.
Well, I will have all of that on the show notes. So, moms, you can click on the description of this podcast and you can get all the connections. So, I think we'd start there. And one thing that just came in my mind, Doug, as we were talking, you have always gone for the front parking spot in your life. And the front parking spot, as what this is my title of my podcast, is that God wants to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can desire or imagine, Ephesians
Yeah.
3:20. And when you think outside of the box and outside of the narrative that seems to be popular with professors and with the current world that are talking, you have gone for the front parking spot because you just didn't settle. You were like safely in your atheism little bubble, but then you wanted to know more. So I think it's safe to say you've always gone for the front parking spot in your life, especially with your resume.
Well, thank you. I love the title of your podcast. Yeah, it's great. I mean, this stuff is there. There's
Mhm.
there's so much wonder stuff. Let me just talk for a second about the universe.
Yeah.
Okay? We know the universe is not all there is. Just think about that. I mean, that kind of blows you away. You know, okay, why do we know the universe is not all there is? Well, it had a beginning.
Mhm.
Okay. Here's another fact. You can't get the present universe from the present laws of universe. That gets a little technical. The first two laws of thermodynamics don't work.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little
And
over my head there, but yeah.
okay, but that's true. You
Right.
cannot get the present universe from the present laws of physics.
Hmm.
Okay, here's a third thing. Again, really nerdy, but you invited me on your show, so
I
we got
love it.
to talk a few seconds. There's an experiment called quantum entanglement. That's going to sound really weird. Here's what the experiment is. They take two particles, and it's been done actually with groups of atoms, and they make them totally alike in a quantum mechanical sense. Don't ask me to explain that further, but I don't know. But
Okay. Yeah.
there's all these, then they take the particles and they separate them. It's been done 80 miles apart.
Okay.
You, and you can, people can Google quantum entanglement. When you change one, the other changes instantly.
Hmm.
I mean, instantly, not the speed of light, you know, instantly. This has been determined scientifically thousands of times. So, since nothing in our universe can travel faster than the speed of light, that's Einstein. Okay, these particles are connected outside space and time. So, there we I like to think we live in a fishbowl. It's a
Mhm.
pretty big fishbowl. Okay, we can't see what's outside the fishbowl. We only get the window into what's outside the fishbowl through the Bible and through
Mhm.
the life of Jesus and through the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
But this universe is not all there is. And I find that I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I
Mhm.
think it's very profound, and
Yeah.
and if you ask someone to think about that, maybe they'll begin to doubt their atheism.
And when you were talking, Doug, I was just thinking of the awe of God. And if we just stop and just settle in and just let the awe, AWE, of God just in a sunrise and a new baby birth and
Yeah.
the tides and the moon and the pulls and all those things. Not to get on, like, I don't understand all the science behind it, but I just know with that Holy Spirit and how he has made a difference in my life. And the only thing I can wish on anybody, my children, my grandkids, anyone I meet, the only thing, it's not money, it's not stuff. I just want them to have a relationship with Jesus, because it's only through that relationship that we designed are truly content. And that's my wish. That's my wish. No one needs $1 million, $10 million, $20 million, because that's not going to make them happy. And that's not going to satisfy their heart. Wow. Okay. We may need to do a part 2 on this, Doug. This was fascinating. I'm going to have all of your info in the show notes. And, mamas, the takeaways is ask your kids questions. Don't freak out if they start bringing up these topics. They're just questioning. Better they question with you as their parents
Yes.
than,
Yes.
yeah, because we want to get them to understand before they go to college and they get those professors. Wow. Any other
Yeah. I
last
mean,
words before
well, I
we?
mean, just that they're going to learn in school about Darwin's theory of evolution. None of the top biologists in the world believe it anymore, because you can't generate the mathematics, the information necessary to build animals. But that message hasn't gotten down to a lot of high school teachers, and it sure hasn't gotten down to the mass media of our country. So there's so much more here we could talk about. I would, I think it's wonderful that, your young moms are looking for ways to fight the atheism, because, yeah, talk to your kids about this stuff. Don't just say, well, I'm dropping you off at Sunday school and therefore you're going to grow up to be a Christian. No, you got to give kids the ammunition to face the secular world.
Yes. Because it's not if, it's when they are
They
questioning.
will.
They
They
will
will
be.
hit atheists. They will hit
Mhm.
atheist professors. They will hit people who think money is everything, like you said, or
Mhm.
fame or whatever like that. I mean, they're going to hit these things, and they need the ammunition to fight this spiritual battle.
And you can't live in a bubble. I remember one of the biggest concerns that my kids, when I would take them to mission trips, they were raised in Christian homes. They had all the Christianese. They had everything. They were in Sunday school. They did all the things. Wednesday night church, Sunday night, everything. Sunday church. But they said, they would tell me that their biggest frustration with their parents is because they're like forced to have this relationship, and they're having the relationship of their parents. It's not their own personal relationship. And that really spoke loud to me that
Yeah.
they're questioning. So, yeah, don't let them live in a bubble. You gotta expose them and talk to these before they're hit with someone who's gonna try to take them off the path. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Doug, for being here today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I love talking about this stuff. So it's been a delight, and I hope I've given some encouragement to some of your moms.
And mamas, please go find that website in these show notes and connect with Doug right now. Thank you for being here, Doug.
Thanks for having me.
Well, mamas, thank you so much for joining in. I know you are super busy doing all the things that can consume your day, but you took a couple of minutes to learn how God wants to build you up in your faith, family, and life, and He wants to applaud you for this. Please subscribe and review my show. This helps other moms tune in as well. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram at Front Parking Spot, on Facebook at Front Parking Spot Mom Community, or my website at jenniferbosma.com. Have an Ephesians 3:20 type of day, mamas, and be encouraged as you go for the front parking spot in your life today. God bless.